Sword Art Online a thing back in 2012? Why are you always so late to these discussions, you filthy, unoriginal faggot?
Based off the popular book of the same name written by Reiki Kawahara, Sword Art Online is considered by many people in the anime community as being one of those shows. A show that starts off with great promise and ends up getting a lot of attention from anime fans both young and old, but ends up degrading more and more into a lifeless shell, with many people giving up on the show as it continued. This anime in a nutshell had an interesting premise, but the execution was the thing that held it back for many people. And personally, I can definitely see where they're coming from. Many of the criticisms that are directed to Sword Art Online are very justifiable and hold a lot of water, and yet despite many people saying that the show is bad, it's still seen everywhere. I'm not just talking about those cancerous ads you see on the sides of anime sites. I'm talking movies, video games, and even a third season that is confirmed to come out this year. And to top all that off, Sword Art Online still has a big fan base even to this day. And the big question that I have is, why? Why does Sword Art Online, a universally hated show, have this much of a following, and why is it still around in all sorts of media? In this video, I'll hopefully be able to give some kind of answer to this question by reviewing what people think is the best part of Sword Art Online, whether that's a good or a bad thing, the first 14 episodes. So I'm going to be looking at Sword Art Online in 3 areas: the plot, the cast, and the presentation. By doing it this way, I can hopefully be able to see both sides of the argument and be able to come to a satisfactory conclusion as to why Sword Art Online is still around. So with that said, grab your nerve gears, and let's get started. So let's begin with what got everyone to be interested in the show in the first place. The story. The plot is basically about a 16-year-old boy named Kirigaya KIRITO. It's easier to say. His name is Kirito, playing a VR interactive RPG game called Sword Art Online, a game that has taken the whole world by storm thanks to the creation of a new piece of technology called Nerve Gear, a device that players place on their heads that stimulates the player's 5 senses to get the ultimate gaming experience. Whilst teaching a new player named Klein about the basics of the game and how to kill pigs with almighty pebbles, the two of them find out that the logout button in their menus is missing. They get transported to the main hub of the game, where they, along with everyone else trapped in the game, are greeted by the game's creator himself, Akihiko Kayaba. He tells everyone that in order to get out safely from the game, as by pulling off the helmet will burn their brains to a crisp, they have to beat the game's 100 floors in order to get out alive. But if they die on their quest to the top, they will die in real life. How Kayaba got away with making something like this and not being jailed for life after creating such a dangerous device is beyond me, but I digress. So now it's up to Kirito and the rest of the players to team up in guilds, stack up on healing items, gain experience points, and take on the 100 floor challenge without dying. I wonder if this game would be like the Dark Souls of VR games. Oh, come on, you're just jealous you didn't think of it. One thing I will always give Sword Art Online credit for is that the narrative in the first 14 episodes is done very well. The pacing I thought was nice, it gets straight to the point and there's little to no filler. The emotional scenes
that don't involve this guy
are handled pretty well. The dialogue, while being more basic than that one bitch in high school, never really made me cringe except for in a few small moments. And the concept of being trapped inside a video game where your brain will cease to exist if you die even once is horrifying, but honestly very cool at the same time. Granted, it's not the most original idea I've ever heard, but the way that it was portrayed in the first few episodes really impressed me on a narrative standpoint. However, despite the interesting premise of the plot and the massive potential that was practically gift-wrapped for them, instead of focusing on the issues that could arrive in a situation like this, the anime decided it would be much better if we focused on the antics of our main character, Kirito. Which was not exactly the best move. I'm sure you guys can already tell, but I never read the book to this anime, and after hearing some things that happened in the book, I'm not exactly in any rush to read it. I'm sure that A1 Pictures wanted to stay as faithful to the book as possible. It is an adaptation at the end of the day, but considering I heard that the studio didn't even do that part right, why didn't they just tell a completely different story? Focus on the characters, or find the world they have to live in and show the beauties and the dangers that it presents. No one wants to see romance in a survival anime where death could happen at any time. Give us actual drama! Show us that you can't simply just sit back and wait to be free. Show that you have to get good and fight in order to survive. It's a game where you die in real life. This shit writes itself, and this is what you guys decide to go with? A plot that goes through all 100 floors in 14 episodes? What? Sorry about that. So after that mini explosion I had right there, you think that I hated the end result, don't you? Well, not exactly. Despite being really annoyed and finding it impossible that the studio did not take this obvious potential to full effect, there was never really a point in the anime where I ever felt bored. I was honestly very entertained throughout the majority of the show's runtime, and like I said before, the story never screeches to a halt anywhere, which I really appreciated. I think the best way I can describe the way I feel about this plot is like an event where a person goes through a serious accident and somehow survives. You have an interesting start and it has a lot of potential to create a good story, but instead of focusing on the victim who went through the accident, you're watching the life of one of the victim's relatives going through the pain of knowing the victim went through said accident. It's not boring, but even though the story can have good moments here and there, you would much rather want to watch what's going on with the victim of the accident, despite how sadistic that sounds, because, well, there's just more to be had. So in conclusion, I'm going to give the story a 7 out of 10. It had an amazing promise at the start and was on the right track, but even though I was very entertained, it gradually just decreased into your typical anime plot. Not boring, but it could have been a lot better. Much like the story, my opinions on the characters are relatively the same, but the difference between my opinions on the characters and the story is that I was able to tolerate the story despite it being wasted potential. The characters, however, at least for me, was what killed my interest of this anime. Similar to the story, the characters started off on the right foot. They all had distinct personalities, each had a motivation of some sort, a lot of them had their strengths and their weaknesses to counterbalance, and many of their interactions with other characters, at least in the first few episodes, felt very genuine and even quite heartwarming. Take the scene from episode 2, where Asuna is seen eating alone and Kirito asks if he could sit with her. Take a minute to look at how these two interact with each other in this scene.
本気で美味しいと思ってる。
もちろん。この町に来てから1日1回は食べてるよ。そのパンに使ってみろよ。
クリーム？
逆襲の目牛ってクエストの報酬。やるならコツを教えるよ。
この町まで来たわけじゃない。
じゃあ何のため？
私が私でいるため。自分のままでいたい。たとえ怪物に負けて死んでもない。どうしても。
せめて明日はやめてくれ。
Now this is a touching scene for two reasons. The first reason is that Kirito and Asuna are trying their best to take their minds off the fact that they just realized the horrible situation they're in and the dangers that this game presents. And because they have little to no social skills, they feel uncomfortable, but also happy to know that someone else is going through the same struggle as them and want to help each other out in any way they can, even if it's just adding some flavor to a piece of bread. And the second reason is, in this short span of time, we get to actually learn about Kirito as a character, and also a little bit about Asuna. From this scene, we learned that Kirito is an antisocial person, who is more comfortable being behind a mask than be who he really is, and would much rather be left alone to his own devices. But in this scene, we learn that he finds himself slowly getting tired of always being alone, and is trying to start a conversation with this new person. And while he's not very good at it, you can admire that he's at least trying to do something that he's not exactly used to doing, which makes you feel for him in this moment. And what we learned about Asuna is that she's very shy, very determined to prove her worth, and sees a lot of herself in Kirito, which is why she allows Kirito to sit with her in the first place, as she feels like they have something in common: their antisocial behavior. It's almost hard to believe that you're able to learn so much about two characters in less than 2 minutes with very minimal dialogue being said. It's just too bad that the rest of the anime completely forgot about these character traits. Kirito goes from being the lone wolf that I'm sure a lot of people can relate to, hell, myself included, to a character that has all the girls falling for him even though he has no social skills, has the ability to wield 2 swords on the first try which everyone thought was impossible, crazy self-healing that makes him near impossible to kill, can kill bosses that take entire guilds to beat by himself, and somehow survives dying in the game despite the plot telling us over and over that dying in the game means instant death in real life. There's overpowered characters in anime, and then there's Kirito, a character with no flaws that can't die. I really don't like using this term, but he's a Mary Sue, plain and simple. And it hurts me to say that because I really liked him in the first few episodes, and to see him turn into this sickly perfect god was honestly a huge loss. Asuna also suffers from this treatment, but suffers in a different regard. At the start, she was a full-on tsundere, shy and antisocial, but strong, determined, and full of pride. She was a badass and didn't need no pesky man to protect her from anything. The anime, instead of using this awesome character to their advantage, what do? Turn her into a full-on waifu princess over the span of one episode. Why? Why turn this character that had such a refined personality into a place where Kirito can stick his two swords into? I'm not even a feminist and yet I'm offended with what they did with such a good character. And Jesus heavenly Christ, the side characters. You know those people that kiss the ass of the popular kid in school, no matter how dumb, bland, or stupid they are? That's all these characters ever did in the whole show. The guys were jealous of Kirito's superior sword skills, and the women all wanted Kirito to bend them over and show them what that second sword can do. Being supportive to the main character is perfectly okay, don't get me wrong. But if it's the only thing the character ever does in the show, it's just painful to watch. But even in the river of knee-high bullshit, there is one gem that manages to appear on the surface, and that gem was there from the very start. And that gem was Klein. Klein was the only character that didn't get his personality completely butchered in the show. Hell, he's the only person that talks to Kirito not as a god, but as a good friend who cheers him on in a perfectly balanced way. And I really do have to thank the creators for not changing his character. Even when he couldn't defeat a simple pig, he was just so likable that I didn't care. He was just so fun to watch. He was the only character that had this amazing thing called development. From being the most noob player in the game to leading his own guild. I feel insulted that this beautiful man got such little screen time. He deserved way more. As much of an asshole I feel about doing this, I'm giving the characters a 3 out of 10. They were so good at the start and just turned into blank slates the further they got into the show. Klein is the only reason why I'm not giving this part a 1 out of 10. Be happy that I'm feeling so generous. Now that my mixed opinions about the characters and the story are out of the way, I can finally give a 100% solid opinion on something about this anime. This anime's presentation is a work of fucking art. Like, just look at it! This anime was able to perfectly show the scope, the volume, and the beauty of the world of the Sword Art Online video game. Every background, object, village, weapon, and dungeon looks like something straight out of a Xenoblade Chronicles game. It's very hard to adapt a book's world onto a screen, and this is the perfect example of how to present a fantasy world in anime form. These backgrounds are something I'd hang up on my wall for just how beautiful and shockingly real they look. I feel like I could look out my window and see the sky look almost exactly like this one frame. It's honestly kind of scary to think how much time the animators put into these backgrounds. It makes me really appreciate the detail put into every nook and cranny of each scene. But I don't think these backgrounds and characters would have looked so good if it wasn't for the colors. Much like No Game No Life, Sword Art Online is based off some kind of fantasy world, meaning that the artist could go nuts with the color palette. Sword Art Online is a very colorful anime, yes, but like what I said about No Game No Life, the anime was never too colorful to be painful to look at. Evening scenes are warmly lit and bathed in lots of oranges and reds, daytime scenes are very bright, vibrant, and full of energy, and the nighttime scenes are colored with cold blues and grays, which gives off a very peaceful tone. All this combined with the brilliant cel shading of the characters really makes them pop, while the backgrounds never get in the way of the scene, no matter how detailed they are. Speaking of the characters, I actually really liked how most of them were designed. Kirito's black clothing combined with that beautifully crafted second sword serves as a nice contrast to the rest of his design. Asuna's vibrant outfit and wavy brown hair is a very badass look. Many of the characters' armor looks simple, but effective at the same time, but the things I thought looked the coolest were the designs of the monsters. All the enemies in this show have very unique designs that make them very easy to recognize, and the bosses just look spectacular. Even the first boss Kirito fights has an awesome look to it. And what's this? CGI in an anime that actually looks good?
Hey Berserk, take notes!
This anime was able to perfectly combine the use of both 2D and 3D animation, which alone is a very hard feat to accomplish, and the way the animators were able to use the two to absolute full effect was mesmerizing to watch. From snow effects in winter scenes, the way characters died in the game, to the intense action of the battles. Which nicely transitions to the next point I want to talk about. These fight scenes are so fun to watch. The speed, weight, camera work, and the choreography of these fights are really a sight to behold. Every blow feels powerful, every sword clang is loud and done even better with the added sparks to give off a lot of visual flair, and every boss attack feels so powerful that it could be Kirito's last. Well, That would be if he didn't have such thick plot armor. Even though I know Kirito is going to survive these battles, I can honestly say that I still get a good adrenaline rush while watching these fights. And all the stuff I talked about are all combined with beautifully flowing animation. It's not Disney flowing animation, it isn't anime after all, but by anime standards, this animation is easily above average. The characters' movements are very grounded in reality while also being over the top for fights. The expressions are very well portrayed and shows you exactly how the characters are feeling, and a lot of their interactions feel very real, much like how two real people would act if they were having a conversation. These conversations between the characters are done even better thanks to the voice acting, which is honestly pretty good. I never felt like the voice actors were ever being lazy in their acting, and I always felt genuine emotion coming out of each character no matter what the scene was. Kirito's voice is disinterested but also quite intense in battles, Klein always sounds cheerful and upbeat, and Asuna has a very nice tone of superiority in her voice, which I really admired from the voice actors, and considering the source material they had to work with, it must have been pretty difficult. But just like the animators and voice actors, the musicians didn't hold back in the slightest, giving us easily one of the best soundtracks I've ever heard.
You say that in every review though!
What? It's not my fault every anime I watch has a better soundtrack than the last! This soundtrack combines all kinds of instruments to create some beautifully composed tracks that fit the mood in every scene they're in. The piano and choir in the peaceful tracks is able to give off lovely emotion and make sad scenes stick out very well, while the heavy drums and guitars of the battle tracks are super fast and energized and give the fights more weight and lots more adrenaline. Even the opening song, despite me hearing it more times than I can count, is still one of my favorite tracks just because of how amazingly composed it was. If you want some examples of great tracks, look up A Tender Feeling, Fight with a Devil, and Luminous Sword, just to give yourself an idea on what the soundtrack is like. Believe me, your ears will thank you later. So yes, I think Sword Art Online, on a technical standpoint, is a marvel of Japanese animation, but even though I do agree with the opinion that Sword Art Online looks nice, that's all I can say. It looks nice. Aside from that, I can't really say any other positive things about this show. It's like anytime I actually try it, there's this voice inside my head that goes, yes, but. And that but always brings up a good point. Just because the media looks nice and has pretty visuals, those visuals don't save it from the people who are looking for more stuff in that media, like good characters, good stories, and good pacing. I know this is a weird comparison to make, but I'd honestly compare SAO to something like Sonic Forces. It looks and sounds great and had great promise, but everything else about it was what completely destroyed it. Pretty imagery in an anime should be seen more as a bonus, not a must-need. It can make an anime stand out, yes, but an art style shouldn't be its only trait. An anime that's a good example of still being great without a big budget is one that came out pretty recently, Devilman Crybaby. Even though the anime has a budget of a YouTuber's ad revenue, it's because of the story and the characters being so consistently good that it's what made many people love the show for what it was. Though I guess the memes also kinda helped in that department. But even though the presentation didn't save this anime, I can say for a solid fact that on its own, it's a pleasure to watch. So with all things said and done, I'm gonna give the presentation a solid 10 out of 10. The beautiful animation, good voice acting, and the many awesome tracks made this anime a piece of technical and musical art. So now that I've reviewed and given my opinions on this show, I think I can now answer that question that I mentioned earlier in the video. Why is Sword Art Online still around, and why does it still have a fanbase? It's because Sword Art Online is dumb fun. While many people watched the show expecting a masterpiece and being very disappointed with what they actually got, there were also many people who watched the show purely because they thought the visuals were so good they didn't really care about the story or the characters. They just wanted to see pretty colors, great animation, and maybe some wanted to see a romance plot. And I think SAO delivered most of those very well. All I'm gonna say is, if you're planning on watching Sword Art Online, approach it with the fact that you're just in it for the animation and nothing else. Or hell, maybe you might actually really like the characters and think the story is flawless. And if you do, that's great. I'm happy that you're able to find something that I found pretty lackluster. Before making this video, I actually went around asking a couple of people in my school about their opinions on Sword Art Online, and I was honestly very surprised with many of the opinions I got. Some liked it, some hated it, and some were in the same boat as me. I had a lot of fun getting people's opinions and being able to see both sides of the argument. So much, in fact, I actually want this to be a thing. So the next anime I'm going to be talking about is the movie Your Name, the highest grossing film in anime history, passing out legendary movies like My Neighbor Totoro and even Spirited Away. So what I would like you guys to do is send me your opinion. Record yourself talking about what you liked/disliked about the movie and send me the file via Discord with the friend code here. I'm not going to be showing anyone's faces, so you can just record yourself using a microphone, and if I get enough responses, I'll be showing them at the end of the next review. But for now, my name is Manga Artist, and I'll see you in the next one. What's your opinion on Sword Art Online?
SAO is interesting and it's a very good anime to watch. It's probably my favorite anime, and it's probably the best one for anyone getting into anime to watch first.
It's a hunk of shit. Like, it is just so bad. The fact that it's made it this far, you know, it's got so many manga, and it's also got 3 series of anime. How the fuck did it make it this far? The plot is shit. I mean, after the first season, sorry, who the fuck would wear the helmet anymore? No.
It's trash, but I love it. I actually, I'm gonna get hate for this, but I actually like it. I like the animation, and it's got an amazing soundtrack. I know there's a ton of plot holes and all of that, but it's still entertaining, so I'm cool with it.
I thought it had a lot of promise, and the art is really pretty. But god fucking damn it, I hate the characters. It has so much wasted plot potential, and why does it bounce around its time frames like that? Like, I don't get it, like, at all. Like, I'm sorry, but I want to see what happens in that 6 months. The best thing it does is fight scenes, yet it cuts time, so you don't see as many fight scenes. And we're just meant to believe this character development when it happens way too quickly. Like, oh my fucking god. And Asuna, dear Jesus, that woman, ugh.